The Acute Hospitals Planning Study report looks at providing long-term health solutions for people in the Hunter. Today, the Area Health Service recommended the period of consultation for the study be extended by 4 months to the end of September to allow more consultation with the community. One option attracting interest, building a major private hospital to complement the services of John Hunter.
And the reaction that we've received from doctors and the University of Newcastle and other major players has been very supportive of the development of a major private hospital, and I think that will probably end up being one of the key recommendations to the Department of Health and the Minister for Health later this year.
Already there are expressions of interest. In return for land, the private hospital would also contribute to teaching and research.
It would add to the range of services available in Newcastle and also strengthen the services at John Hunter Hospital and would provide additional beds on the John Hunter campus. So I think all round a win for everyone.
Other options, some controversial, covered by the report: closing Royal Newcastle Hospital and expanding the services of the Mater, Belmont and John Hunter hospitals. The report recommends a community health centre be established for the inner city area, and the fate of the Royal, a hotel and conference centre. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News. Hailing from diverse backgrounds throughout the country, delegates spent the day discussing issues relating to gender and society. While for years women's rights have held centre stage at such seminars, times are changing.
For quite a few years people have looked at women and feminism, those issues. Now there's a distinct focus on men and masculinities.
Also discussed, enterprise bargaining, stress in the workplace, health, religion and the media. Gender studies have grown beyond an initial concern with women as a disadvantaged group. It now embraces gay and lesbian issues, race and sexuality.
Well, I think it's immensely exciting and one of the very vibrant areas of research at the moment.
Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
There are 3 trophies on offer this weekend. 2 of them are memorial events, named after drivers Ken Waggett and Alan Hatherall, who died in races years ago. It underlines the dangers of an extreme sport, where boats reach speeds of up to 250 kilometres an hour.
No boat driver likes to race in it as a memorial race, but there are some very prestigious ones around. It gives a lot of people a lot of honour to win them.
Newcastle driver Tim Lyons is well aware of the risks involved. He nearly died in a race last year.
I broke myself back into the boat real slow. We put a smaller engine in the boat and it was about 50 mile an hour slower than this engine.
Bruce Lyle is the Australian champion in the unlimited hydroplane class, and he's brought a bit of magic to the competition. Heats were run today. There'll be more tomorrow with the finals beginning on Monday. Robert Ovadia, NBN News.
Councillor Margaret Henry, a member of the Matara Committee, is anxious to see the report's recommendations adopted. It's not a view shared by many other committee members. While the contents of the report are confidential at this stage, Councillor Henry has revealed she'll be discussing at tomorrow night's meeting the prospect of a shorter festival with an emphasis on quality events. She's keen to see a revised Matara for next year's bicentenary.
Unfortunately, the Matara Committee's been rather resistant to change. And one of the recommendations of the Strait Committee was that Council should fund a full-time paid organiser.
Fellow committee members disagree with Councillor Henry's proposals. They say hundreds of volunteers have helped organise the festival. Committee members are looking at the report and will respond after the council review. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
Blown motors and mechanical problems reduced the fleet to a manageable size for today's finals. Organisers accelerated the reduced program to beat the weather. All eyes were on Liberty, the top-line racer engineered and driven by National Australasian champion Brian McCosker, home with another win in the Northern Districts Championship.
Well, we put a great deal of work and effort into it, and I race fairly consistently, and we've got 3 events in the next 3 weeks, so it keeps you on your toes.
The spirit of sportsmanship was alive in the Toronto Motor Yacht Club's Powerboat Spectacular. Rival and new kid on the block, Paul Maddle, blew his motor in bad attitude. McCosker, who missed qualifying for the Alan Heatherall Memorial, offered him Liberty.
I sort of like to throw in and help when I can.
Especially being Liberty the fastest boat in Australia. To be offered to me is unbelievable, yes.
Driving Liberty and powering into heavy rain, Maddle from Sydney held off assaults by Formula One boat RDM and Sacrifice for his first race win. Andrew Lobb, NBN News. Randwick Race 6 today was the PJ Bell Country Championship over 1,400 metres. The Place's Dapper Spirit, $8.50 and $2.80. Jazz Pritzia, $3.90 and Shoeshine Man, $2. The Quinella, $79.90. The Trifecta, $635.50. At Newcastle, it was the Tooheys Blue Ice Handicap over 1,400 metres. Daily Envoy paid $3.80 and $1.40, Love's a Battle $3.50 and Cool Square $2.60, the Quinella $40 and the Trifecta $426.80. And the big one, Race 7 at Eagle Farm, the Brisbane Cup over 3,200 metres. The placings 9, 7 and 13, the Quinella $17.20 and the Trifecta $251.10.
At Nelson Bay near Newcastle, the number 5 grade final was fought out between Newcastle Jockey Club and Orange City. 3 teams of 4 bowlers from each club played a total of 63 ends, with the high standard of play keeping the crowd enthralled. Newcastle didn't start the match well, but by the 36th end they'd fought back to be 36 all. But in the very next end they dropped a huge 14 shots. From then on, Orange City gained momentum. The final score, Orange City 67, Newcastle Jockey Club 53. In Foster, the news wasn't good for the number 1 grade finalists. Bad weather constantly hampered play. St John's Park and the Entrance finally made it onto the greens though, and in a closely fought match, St John's Park came out on top 70-61. Simone Thurtell, NBN News.
At 6:30 p.m, a man wearing a balaclava thrust a gun into the faces of 2 women working at the Metford takeaway shop. He demanded money and then fled.
Oh, it's just the surprise. He just ran in and with a shotgun and just wanted the money. We just weren't expecting anything like that to happen to us.
Nothing you could do but hand over money.
It's the 3rd robbery to strike Maitland in the past 2 weeks. The Montepio Motel and the Rutherford Hotel were held up also. In the Cessnock Curry Western area, there have been 12 armed hold-ups over the past 3 months. Although some have been solved, police and the small business community are concerned.
I guess one aspect that shop owners could look at is security measures such as
surveillance cameras and the like.
Maitland police believe there may be a link between the robbery at this Medford takeaway and an armed hold-up at the Rutherford Hotel last week. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
Newcastle University law lecturer Professor Warren Pengilly was the guest of honour at the Business Breakfast in Newcastle. His talk focused on Section 52 of the Trade Practices Act, which deals with misleading and deceptive conduct.
I believe that misleading or deceptive conduct applies to every negotiation, not just to advertisements to the public. Second thing is to gear everything by this test. Is it the truth? Is it a truthful impression?
Professor Pengilly said it's important to double-check facts, especially when entering any new agreement, to avoid problems further down the track.
And if you induce the person by misleading or deceptive conduct to enter into the contract, that person will have an action against you regardless of what is in the contract.
Advertisers are also warned to be careful they don't completely alter the truth in order to sell a product.
And after all, advertisements are in the game of image creation. And it's not too hard to tip over the image creation, which is a truthful image, and one which is a little bit avant-garde and tends to be a little bit over the top.
There was standing room only at Mayfield's Baptist Church. More than 300 people turning out on a cold night to turn up the heat on the brothel proposal.
What a disgrace if, having got the suburb back to where it is today, if we pollute it morally.
And one of the things that we don't talk about is where are they going to get their workers? I have 2 daughters, and I don't want by Australian to mean Kristen or Erin.
The residents are worried this former fast food restaurant will be turned into a one-stop sex shop. The developer has proposed a facility that would include a brothel, cinema and adult book and video store. But opponents claim it breaks a number of provisions of the draft code covering disorderly houses. The main concern is the proximity of the sex centre to brothels in the area. It's feared an approval could be the first step towards Mayfield becoming the red light district for the city of Newcastle. Residents claim the sex centre also contravenes other provisions of the draft code, as it's within 1 kilometre of schools and churches and within 100 metres of homes. Those alleged breaches could see the proposal rejected before it even gets to a vote at council. NBN couldn't contact the developer Peter Stanley today. He'll be told of council's decision in the coming weeks, but the people of Mayfield have already made up their minds. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
A Newcastle tradition since the early 1960s, the Matara Festival has endured a behind-the-scenes tug-of-war of late. Its organising committee the target of allegations of mismanagement and impropriety. But the claims haven't been borne out in an auditor's report. Newcastle Council deciding last night to leave the voluntary committee in place with just a few adjustments to its accounting procedures.
It is certainly vindication on the committee's part that they are above reproach. There are some housekeeping matters that needed to be attended to, obviously, and in any organisation you will find those kind of things. However, none of them involved any illegalities.
Now the committee is pointing the finger at one of its own members, City Councillor Margaret Henry, who's been an outspoken critic of the Matara Festival executive.
I certainly am demanding a public apology from her for sullying the reputations of the people on the committee who have only worked for this city and have done it with the highest integrity.
But Margaret Henry says an apology is unwarranted. Late today she acknowledged the hard work of the Matara committee. She said her criticisms were only aimed at improving the festival, something the new accounting procedures should also help achieve. The snap announcement by Treasurer Peter Costello couldn't have come at a worse time for Lake Macquarie Council, which only last night adopted its budget for the coming financial year. Without the sales tax exemption, its vehicle replacement plans will mean a $500,000 blowout in its finances.
So it means that we're going to have to look completely at the program of vehicle replacement, and probably we'll reduce the number of vehicles we can purchase and look at other ways of funding vehicle purchases.
Car buying has suddenly become a major headache for all local councils, where once they stood to profit from a quick turnover of inexpensive cars, now they'll have to make the fleet drive further. But it's the prospect of the sales tax exemption being scrapped across the board which really has the councils worried. Hamstrung by rate pegging, the extra money for that would be hard to find.
We'll certainly be doing our best to minimise any impact on services, but we don't have the option of increasing revenues, and so there is a potential for us to have to rethink some of the levels of service.
Councils are hoping, though, to make it a two-way street. Port Stephens Council, for example, says if push comes to shove, it'll hit the Commonwealth with a rate notice for the Williamtown Airport to bring in another $250,000 a year.
Last weekend's outing against the Crushers was a nightmare for Newcastle coach Malcolm Reilly. In an already disappointing performance, the Knights were dropping like flies. Matthew Johns, one of the chief concerns with an ankle injury, Lee Jackson at one stage with a suspected broken leg.
It's turned out badly bruised, but once again he ran last night, although it wasn't 100%. He will be right for the weekend.
And so will Johns, not quite 100%, but ready and able to captain the side. Missing will be brother Andrew, on origin duty along with the chief, Adam Muir and Jamie Ainscoe. Reilly says the absence of the Knights' playmaker will be felt, but believes Brett Camorley will be able to take up the slack.
Brett's a fairly good seasoned campaigner. He's been in the first team a few times before, and he'll handle the position well.
Newcastle's footballing lesson at the hands of the Sydney Tigers earlier this year has taught them the evils of complacency, a trap they're not willing to fall into again. On paper, the Knights' form suggests a comfortable win, the Cowboys languishing in the cellar. That fact will be disregarded come Saturday night.
They're harder to play against, the lower clubs, because psychologically the preparations, the players find it difficult.
Robert Ovadia, NBN News.
.38-year-old Anne Mort has been in the sport of powerlifting for only 4 years and she's already won 4 national titles. She's now in training for the World Championships in Canada in 2 weeks. Keeping a close eye on her, her husband and coach, John. The two work out together in their gym at Curry in the Hunter Valley. And you'd think this kind of workload would put a strain on their 19-year marriage.
When we come down in the gym to train, I'm the coach. And, you know, sometimes I've just got to say to Anne, I don't care what you think or what you want. That's what you got to do, you know.
They're still happily married. Anne's skills grew as she competed around the country, but at first she was embarrassed about her great strength. In the local gym, she was lifting heavier weights than most of the men.
Now it doesn't worry me. I just think, well, you know, they've just got to catch up.
Anne's personal best of 155 kilos for the squat should keep her in touch with the top 10 women in the world. No doubt her coach will be urging her on. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
More than 500 runners made the cut from 9 school zones to compete in the cross-country championships. Just 6 students out of each age division win the chance to go on to the state titles in Sydney next month. The juniors from 8 to 10 covered a 2-kilometre course, the 11, 12 and 13-year-old boys and girls 3 kilometres. It's serious stuff. They come back mud-spattered from the hills and hollows of the Wall's End course. When Renee Monk from the Manning lost her shoe in a mud bog, she ran on rather than lose her place.
I lost it where all this mud is and there was this bridge and I fell off it into the mud and I just couldn't pick it up, I couldn't be bothered.
Later, good news from course officials.
I found the shoe!
Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
Mayfield gun shop owner Graham Couples ordered the 26 semi-automatic pistols from Spain, but they arrived early and without the customs stamp of approval.
I was very surprised when they turned up at the shop. I wasn't expecting them. I knew that I'd be notified in due course about them. I knew they were coming in, but I was quite shocked to find they'd gotten through without any proper passing.
Australian import laws are supposed to ensure this can't happen. There's a myriad of regulations which include inspections by customs and the federal police. When the pistols arrived without the usual documentation, Mr Couples alerted the relevant authorities.
I think you'll find that most dealers in Australia would react in the same way, to try and stop it from falling into the wrong hands or going through the wrong channels.
It's believed human error is responsible for the oversight. Despite the mix-up, Mr Couples believes the existing gun laws are adequate. The $12,000 worth of pistols will be given approval to be sold within the next couple of days. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Good on you, friends. Happy birthday, dear Roy. Happy birthday to you.
Roy Hankin was 99 when he moved into the Woodport retirement village at Erina. Since hitting the century mark, he celebrated every birthday there in style, and his 103rd was no exception. Together, family and friends gathered to cheer him on. They say his stamina is astounding. A World War I veteran, he still participates in annual Anzac Day services. And as for some advice as to how he maintains that youthfulness,
I wouldn't like to tell you.
Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
The Falcons were backing up from a 30-point loss, and the early signs weren't good as the Kings shot away to a 13-point lead at the first quarter. Sydney showed the form that had them gunning for their 7th straight win, although the Falcons did get the deficit to 8 by half-time. Butch Hayes never gave up on his way to 25 points for the night, but no one can match Hill when he hammers. Lachlan Armfield gave Newcastle a chance with seconds remaining, but the Falcons left their run too late, the Kings winning by 4. Meanwhile, Sydney driver Bruce Watman is the 1996 Man of the Mountain, following the New South Wales long course titles at Milbrodale near Singleton. Coolars Neil Morrison failed in his attempt to win a 4th title after he was forced to withdraw with mechanical problems. And in local soccer, 3 games were washed out, leaving just the one result, Western downing Pasminco 2-1.
many Year 12 students, the HSC looms as one of the toughest set of exams they have ever had to face, the results often determining which direction their career will take.
You just feel like you've got so much to work for, and if you don't do well, it's your whole future.
Since the first HSC exams in 1967, the proportion of students completing Year 12 has increased fourfold, from less than 16% to more than 70%. During that time, the HSC system has gone through numerous changes, the most recent the introduction of the tertiary entrance rank, a single number indicating each student's ranking in the state. The HSC has also been the focus of much community debate, many claiming it has become outdated and is no longer a fair assessment of students' abilities.
What we've got with the current HSC is one vehicle which tries to serve many purposes, and it's not serving all those purposes well.
People very academic throughout the year tend to bum out in the last exams because there's so much pressure on them.
Now, for the first time since the Wyndham Review of the 1950s, which led to the first HSC exams almost 30 years ago, the government has launched a major overhaul of the system. The review is designed to ensure the HSC is best meeting the changing needs of today's students. The 200-page HSC Green Paper forms the basis of the study, outlining a range of options for reform. It's designed as a guideline for community debate and is open to public comment until the end of August.
This is what we're asking the public to do now, is to say which options they would prefer, which they think would improve the HSC, which are unacceptable.
One of the major changes being considered is the total restructure of the current curriculum, with less emphasis on the final exams to reduce the stress on students. The replacement of the tertiary entrance rank and new methods of assessment are also being looked at.
We have the opportunity to evaluate what we're up to, but look in a general sense at where we're wanting to go, and then put in place a structure that will suit those needs for our students into the future.
The review, based on the HSC Green Paper, covers a range of sweeping changes, from expanding the curriculum to the introduction of a separate general achievement test to accompany the HSC results. It also looks at a move away from the traditional pass and fail exam marks to adopt a scale in terms of performance. One of the main changes being suggested is a total restructure of the final school years, possibly starting senior study in Year 10 instead of Year 11.
As occurs in many overseas countries, we could have a junior secondary of 3 years and then a senior secondary of 3 years.
Such a restructure might also involve placing less emphasis on the final exams by introducing a string of more gradual assessments throughout the senior years, an option favoured by many students.
There's a lot of pressure for you to study in the last bit and then get these really good marks.
If the emphasis was taking off a little bit off the final exams, it would probably help with pressure and stress, because it really is very stressful.
The current tertiary entrance rank, the final result or state ranking which students anxiously await come January, is also under scrutiny.
Families and candidates often find it hard to interpret what the scaling mechanisms are that are used. Employers often find it hard to understand. And I suppose the third major users are the universities. We recognise, along with others, that there are some problems with the way in which the TER is constructed.
I don't know, it just feels like there's a lot of pressure on that one mark.
One suggestion is to introduce a series of different scores for different subject areas.
We might need a maths science type score, a basic English type score, and maybe a humanities creativity type score and so on.
The review covers a range of other areas, offering a total of 40 options for discussion. It's open to public comment until the end of August, with the final report on the findings expected in December. Public meetings to discuss the changes are being held throughout the state. The next is in the Hunter region on June the 27th, when the author of the report, Barry McGaw, will be at Merriweather High School to answer any questions. Emma Siossian, NBN News.